Nancy Pelosi setting off a new wave of fury and threats from China after touching down in Taiwan. Beijing warning that the trip could have serious consequences. Pelosi getting an escort from Taiwan's Air Force while flying in earlier today. The U.S. and Taiwan on high alert with 4 American warships positioned off the east side of the island. China reportedly set to respond with live-fire military drills surrounding Taiwan. A new video shows Chinese tanks rolling on its coastline. Beijing piling on with the threats and saying America will pay.
We will take whatever we can to respond and to protect, to safeguard our sovereignty, territorial integrity. And our response will be very firm, strong, and forceful.
Pelosi not backing away from this face-off with China, but the White House is refusing to take a firm stance about the trip. Watch.
Nothing's changed about our one China policy. Nothing's changed about our support to Taiwan and their self-defense. And the Speaker has a right to travel. She is the Speaker of the House. She is a member of Congress. Members of Congress of both parties, as you know, have traveled to Taiwan even just this year. It's an independent branch of government. We gave her advice and counsel. We gave her context and information. Obviously, as is typical, we are helping with her transportation. But this is a decision that only she can make, and we support and respect that decision.
Republicans are calling out the White House for showing weakness and putting Pelosi in a bad spot.
This administration seems to be afraid at every step of the way of provoking our adversaries. If you've seen what's happened in Ukraine, they've consistently signaled that what we're not going to do out of fear of provoking Putin. The same thing, I think, is true here. We're so risk averse. We're afraid of provoking the Chinese Communist Party. We've put ourselves in a straitjacket.
Joe Biden elevated this to DEFCON 1 last month. He should have never leaked it to the public that Nancy Pelosi was going to go to Taiwan to try to pressure her not to go. He shouldn't have said the military didn't want her to go. The administration should not have pressured her not to go. We cannot allow the Chinese communists to dictate where American citizens can travel and what we can do around the world, especially our elected leaders.
Greg Gutfeld, where do you stand on the Pelosi-Taiwan situation?
Oh, man, this is so interesting. I have to say, war with China as well as Russia was not on my bingo card. I mean, we need to look back at all those big, thick books written by all the important people from the Brookings Institution, or where's Francis Fukuyama? Where are all the people that said this was going to be great? And it's all falling apart. I go back to 2017. It was a terrible time for this world because of all those Trump tweets, right? The punishing, relentless psychological torture that he caused. Thank God that's gone. Now we just have inflation, a Cold War, a hot war, raging crime wave. North Korea's even back. So thank God, no tweets. But to your point, what is this trip trying to prove? Is it worth the cost? Is it a practical move, or is it a costly virtue signal? My problem is I find myself agreeing with people I don't trust or disagreeing with people I trust. It's incredibly confusing, which is why this is a great story, because it's flipping everybody around. If I say the trip is bad, I agree with the New York Times. If I say the trip is good, I agree with Drudge. I'm the real victim. So I'm thinking I agree with Mitt and Trump, because it's rare that they're on the same side. They're saying this is an expensive trip and it's not worth it. You don't want World War III to be started by Nancy Pelosi, a congresswoman from California into her 9th decade with a face tighter than a snare drum. I guess, though, what the congressman was saying, why heed China's warning when we didn't even heed Russia's warning about NATO, right? And that worked out splendid.
What is China going to do now, Jessica? They've made a lot of threats. They didn't carry through with those threats, but now they say more is coming.
I guess we wait and see, and we're as prepared as we can be. And it seems like they were for everything they've gotten so far. Obviously, they executed a few cyber attacks on Taiwanese government sites. But so far, these are all things that we can bear in support of Taiwan. I don't think that we're regretting the decision right now. The thing that I find most interesting about what's gone on is what Senator Cotton was saying, that the Biden administration were the ones that leaked the details of this. Because when it first started coming on the press, I said on air, who leaked this? Because it's official policy that Nancy Pelosi's whereabouts are not known until she just shows up in a photo op in X place. And she's third in line. Right. And if it was the administration, that's an incredibly dangerous thing to do, to just get your way over a visit. He could have just called her and maybe he talked her down from doing this or asked for different timing. And that's a game that I don't think that they should have played if that is what they did. But I do, unlike Greg, well, I mean, the upside down stuff is fun, but it is nice to see generally a pretty unified front in terms of you had that letter come out, 45 Republicans signing in support of her, including McConnell, saying this is, what we should be doing and standing with our Taiwanese allies. And I do like to see that.
That's kind of a bold move to leak the trip for Nancy Pelosi from the Biden administration. Why do you think they would do that? To box her in?
Absolutely. And, to assert control over her and to show her that she's not the one who sets the agenda, certainly not the foreign policy agenda of this administration, which they've done a horrible job of. And, it's like, I agree with Greg. I think that there should be more disruptors. There should be more turning the apple cart upside down and seeing where the apples roll, because I don't think that chaos and disruption are the same thing as being provocative. She's not necessarily provoking war. What she's doing is being a little bit unpredictable, but still standing up for freedom. And people who are standing up for freedom, especially internationally, they're few and far between. There are way too many LeBron James and way too few Enes Kanter freedoms.
Yep, that is true.
Katie, do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I also think it's important to talk about the fact that we are not causing this conflict. The United States, China is causing this conflict. They're the ones who are acting irrationally. They're the ones making the threats. It is not uncommon for politicians from the United States to go to Taiwan. They're an independent country. We have a $100 billion trade agreement with them. It is totally normal for the Speaker of the House to go to Taiwan to visit with their leaders. So Xi Jinping is supposed to be anointed emperor for life, basically, in the next couple of months. I think a lot of the posturing here has to do with that. And also, we are not prepared for a long-term fight with China. China is in all of our institutions. They were in our Confucius Institutes. There are professors and universities across the country who are being paid to give China our intellectual property. They own still a lot of our PPE production, which we saw during the pandemic they used as a weapon against us and the rest of the world after causing the pandemic. We have not done enough to take our supply chains out of that country. And so, China has input itself in U.S. politicians and U.S. companies, and we are not prepared for a long-term conflict. And this Taiwan situation is a very small taste of what China plans to do in the future in terms of making demands and threats. And as long as we are reliant on them, it's going to be a problem for us.
Is this her swan song, Greg? Is she going to retire after they lose the House? And is this her doing a little Far East swing as the big diplomat and burnishing her credentials as a big China hawk?
That's a terrible reason to do this then, right?
Well,
I'm still trying.
Politicians do a lot of stuff for PR.
But I was thinking about what Kennedy said when she brought up LeBron James. It is kind of interesting when you saw all those brave thought leaders screaming bloody murder about the Saudis and the golf tournament. But where are they on China? Can you weigh in on this? I mean, all you NBA players, has anybody asked LeBron about this lately? I mean, how many people are still? I mean, we keep talking about decoupling, and I don't know. Are we decoupling?
No.
I don't think we're decoupling at all.
Not at all.
It doesn't sound that much fun.
No, it's like Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin are still married. Greg.
Yes, exactly. Living in the same place.
Very messy.
We are consciously decoupling from China. It's just taking a very long time.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.